You may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. Margaret Thatcher. My friends, we see stocks and bonds are down for the day, gold and Bitcoin up. Let's jump into these charts. We see the S&P 500 for the week. Well, let's look at where the high was last week, 518.22. Now, I'm reading this from this portion of the screen, and of course, it follows along with the tick lines. That is the weekly chart, so it shows you the high during the week. This would be the high during the 2-day chart and the high on the 195-minute, or what we call the half-day chart, which is not 4 hours. The markets, of course, open 9:30 to 4. 195 minutes is exactly halfway. That's why we use that, and not a 4-hour chart. So as we look at the high last week, 518.22, this week, 517.38. So we are not up to where we were last week. Does that mean things are slowing? Markets getting ready to roll over and go down? No. Does mean that it could be digesting this upward move and getting ready to pull back shortly. We saw that happen back after the run up through Christmas, and then the start of the new year, things pulled back, then they took off again. So we are watching. We're still long. We're still being patient. We can see on both the half-day and the 2-day chart that we're still just moving up that weekly trend line, long-established weekly trend line, a beautiful line. When it is broken, we will, of course, be paying attention. Now, we move to the NASDAQ 100, down 0.77%, and we do see that our trend line is broken. Now, we can try to connect that to more candles as we move along. Again, depending on how far down we go, and again, we're connecting. There we go. That maybe is a little more reminiscent of what we saw with the S&P. But however we draw it, if we go all the way up to the closest, the last 2 days, regardless, we see that the doji we have for the week, that means lots and lots of indecision. We're 3 days into a 5-day candle. We're, I would say at least 2/3 of the way up to the average volume on the weekly chart. So we are paying close attention to this pullback slowdown. It is a great deal of indecision. We've seen indecision, before. We saw that at the beginning of the year, first 2 weeks, as a matter of fact. But again, a doji is special, and we are watching that closely along with the requisite volume to just see how things continue to move through the week. We have, again, prices below that prior trend line on the weekly chart. We look at where we are on the 2-day chart. We're just a little bit below the weekly trend line there. And of course, on the half day, we are below it. 2 spinning tops for the way, again, trending down 0.77%. Not pulled the trigger. We're still long, but we are cautious at this point. Very, very cautious to see which way the Qs is going to go. Now, again, could just digest those gains again and then move back up, or it could roll over and go down. We'll continue to watch both price and volume. Let's move on to the 20-year bond fund, TLT. What do we see there? It pulling back 0.5% for the day, 0.48 to be exact. And again, we look at the high last week of 96.40, this week of 96.01. We're not hitting the high of last week. Volume, again, not quite even halfway there, 3 days into it. We look at the 2-day, and again, below average volume there, red candle. We haven't penetrated the weekly trend line on the 2-day. And again, this is the Tuesday, Wednesday, so that is finished drawing. We look at the half day, we can see 2 days of down movement, candles pushing just below and still within the weekly trend line there with high volume at the end of the day. So we'll continue to watch. As we told you all along, we had nothing to guide us into this up move at all. Why? Because we didn't have any volume. Again, I keep pulling you back to, look at what we see here on where we had the down move with heavy volume that week beginning the 23rd of October. And then the turnaround week beginning the 30th, where again, we had above average, that's what this black line is, volume, a green spinning top, telltale sign of volume and Heikin-Ashi candlesticks working to tell us what was going to happen. So we'll continue to track, wait, watch, and see what's going on. on bonds until they finally set themselves up with some signals where we feel comfortable entering into a practice trade. Now, what about gold? Gold up 0.70%, but again, as we look at gold, we look at where it was last week. The high-end gold, 203.30. This week, 202.41. Not reaching that high of last week. Recovering some for the day after yesterday's down move. Still well above the weekly trend line on the half-day and the two-day. But again, a very weak two-day candle. Did get up to just above average volume. But again, we can see how weak the candle itself was. So we'll keep an eye on gold, still long on gold. Again, nothing that got us into this. We had not quite average volume where it hit its interim low, and then when it turned around, we didn't have above average volume. Again, not a beautiful chart like we saw when gold hit a low with high volume and then turned around again with that green spinning top. We didn't have that this time. Now, let's move on to Bitcoin, up for the day 2.94%. That little engine that could is Bitcoin continuing to move up. We see up in the morning, further up in the afternoon on the half-day chart. Two-day chart, the prior high was 82.67. 83.36 is the high on this two-day candle. Price on both the half-day and two-day, well above that weekly trend line. Things moving in the right direction. Now we are going to go to the 24-hour-a-day Bitcoin to see a little bit about where volume is. Almost just on Wednesday, almost up to average volume already on the weekly chart. This latest two-day candle, now again, this is I have to keep in my mind, this is a new one for me to adjust around. We're going from the ETF to the 24-hour-a-day Bitcoin chart. So as we look at things, we see that this started on Wednesday. So we're already, we're above halfway, it sure appears, as far as volume goes. Things moving up. Prior high was 73,054, 73,679. So nice higher high there. And again, things moving in the right direction. So that is where we are on all of our charts. We so appreciate you being with us. We always love to hear from you. If you have questions, problems, concerns, something you don't quite understand about what I'm talking about each and every day, would love to hear from you. Lots of great training. If you're not subscribed at chartingwealth.com, go there, subscribe for free. You'll get a special training every single day along with our 4 days a week weekly daily reviews, and then our once a week on Fridays weekly review and forecast. That list is never spammed, never shared. We so appreciate you being with us. God bless, my friends. All the best from the whole team at Charting Wealth World Headquarters.